Welcome to Prime Time, a show for adults in the prime of life. I'm Susan Hoskins, the Executive Director of the Princeton Senior Resource Center. We're a nonprofit organization providing programs and services for older adults, their families, and caregivers. We seek to educate people about current issues and connect you with the resources you need. Visit us at the Suzanne Patterson Building or at Spruce Circle. Or visit our website at princetonsenior.org. That contact information will be available at the end of the show. Today, we're talking about retirement planning and making your dollars stretch. In retirement, my guest is Marion Sommer. Marion is with New England Financial, which is a division of MetLife. Welcome, Marion.
Thank you. I enjoy being here.
Great. So, financial planning is a really big topic, and we could start in several places, but I'm just wondering if you could start out by talking about what are some of the basics of developing a sound financial plan for retirement?
Some of the basics, I would say, is to work with a financial planner and do a financial plan.
Right.
It's never too early to start or even really too late to start. What you want to do is take a look at where your situation is and where you want to get to.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, what you want to do is make sure that you do not have debt, so that you want to live within your means. Once you're able to do that, you want to have what's called a cash reserve, money that is liquid. In essence, something that is in a money market or a savings account. So that can come up for emergencies or opportunities in life. If you need a new car all of a sudden, if you've lost your job, you want to make sure that you have at least 6 months worth of savings to cover any expenses that you would typically have in that 6-month period. And I dare say in this kind of economic downturn, you may even want to have a little bit more than 6 months, depending upon whether you're the sole provider or whether there are two people, whether each one of the couple is earning money.
I think we're also finding in the Engaged Retirement Encore Career Program that there are a lot of people who have been laid off from jobs who are over 50 or who had a job, retired, and are now thinking about going back to work. And they're finding that it does take several months to find a new position. They're out there, but it takes a lot of time and perseverance. So you need to have enough of a cushion to sustain you during that time.
Exactly.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the things that comes to my mind is that I would think it's awfully hard for a 20 or 30-year-old to think about retirement, to envision it. I mean, I know that my own thinking has evolved over the years as I've watched my parents, my in-laws, now my sisters and brothers-in-law entering retirement, that there are a lot of things to consider that I certainly never thought of as a young adult. You just think you're going to live forever and work forever.
And buying that next video is often more important than setting aside money. I think as unhappy a situation as this current economic downturn is, I think it has returned us, though, to certain basics. And I do see a difference with people of all ages, and especially those who are 20 and 30, who are sitting there and saying to me, do you realize that if I would only save $2,000 a year for the next 40 years at a fairly reasonable rate of return, I would have $500,000 in the next 40 years? And I say, yes, I know.
Those are pretty impressive figures, aren't they? I mean, I
Yes.
think people often think, wow, I've got to have $1,000 a month extra to start putting money aside. But those aren't the numbers, are they?
No, it really is more like $150 a month, depending, of course, upon how much you earn. But approximately $166 a month will get you to $2,000 a year, which, with a reasonable rate of return, will get you to $500,000 in 40 years.
So it sounds like if you have figured out how to budget for that student loan, when you stop paying the student loan, when it's paid off, you should just set that same money aside for retirement.
It's important to realize and as I said, a lot of younger people are realizing it, that easily 5% of whatever you're bringing in should be set aside for savings. First for a cash reserve that I spoke about, and after that to start setting money aside for retirement. Because what people, once all the numbers are crunched, and what people are starting to realize is that if you set aside money at a very young age, which meaning in your 20s, it is virtually painless to reach an age where you can retire and have enough money. So if you do the right things, you won't even feel it.
Wow. Now, what about those people who didn't do that, who are now in their 50s? I mean, I heard an astonishing figure when I was at the National Aging Conference that there are 25 million baby boomers who have less than $1,000 saved for their retirement. And I think you hear a lot of boomers saying, I'm never going to retire. I'm just going to keep working. And you hear people saying, well, I'll start when I get closer. What do we do? I mean, boomers are really famous for pursuing pleasure and putting off some of those financial realities.
And feeling invincible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are a number, as I said, it's never too early or even too late to do some financial planning. Obviously, the sooner you do it, the better it is. For instance, if you're in your 50s, it's really important to take a reading at that age and say, test the air, say, where am I and where do I want to be by the time I reach retirement age. It doesn't mean that you're going to retire then, because a lot of boomers feel that they're never going to retire. But things happen, and you may find yourself all of a sudden retired when you didn't expect it. So it's important to take a reading in your 50s and see where you are, see how much you can pare down your expenses in case you haven't saved, so that you will have a balance between what you're spending now and what you'll spend in the future.
One of the things that you just said I think is important, that many people think that they're going to work forever, but things do come up. One of those may be a health event, and you find that you can't keep working full-time or work. But another one that I'm finding a lot, because I do so much work with family caregivers, is people finding that they need to quit their job to take care of someone else, a parent or a spouse or a sibling even.
Right. And I do see that with the people I work with. And part of what I do when I'm working with people is to prepare my clients for that possibility. In essence, my job is to prepare my clients for all sorts of scenarios. So what would happen if one of your parents become ill? What happens if your spouse becomes ill? What happens if you lose your job? In this economic downturn, I know quite a number of close friends who have actually lost their job quite unexpectedly. And once you're in your 50s or 60s, I might say, the chances of you becoming gainfully employed in another job do start to decrease. So my job is to say, what would happen if? Let's see how you can be prepared. And that's really what we do. We make sure that people are prepared for a medical event from their parents, for a downsizing of their company, for a medical event in their own life or their spouse's life or even their child's life. And also, what would happen if your job becomes obsolete? And I do have a client whose job is becoming obsolete, and he actually had to take a fairly substantial job cut just to remain employed for the next 5 to 10 years until, or hopefully more, but until he at least reaches that, what is considered the typical age of retirement, which is 65 or so.
I think people are also surprised to find that at some point they're just burned out. I work with a lot of people who are in nonprofits and in social services, and I think it happens with teachers, but in a lot of jobs you've been doing the same thing. A lot of people in our generation have been doing the same job for 20 or 30 years, And there just comes that point where you feel like, I don't want to keep doing this. I'm not being effective anymore. I'm teaching something that a younger person may be much better at teaching than I am. And or I've always wanted to do this other thing, and I want to make that change.
Right,
So
right.
proper financial planning really gives you those opportunities, doesn't it?
Exactly, it does.
So that you can follow that dream.
Yes, and I know people who have said, you know, after a certain period of time, I want to work for a nonprofit because I want to give back something to the community.
Yeah.
But I can't retire. Well, I say, well, let's see if we can make that happen.
Yeah.
You know, what would your world look like? What would you be willing to give up, if anything, if need be? Or maybe you really are there already, and you have actually more money than you thought to sustain yourself as you pursue another dream.
Right, or really sometimes even as a volunteer of really giving back to the community, or doing something that has heart meaning to it,
right.
and soul meaning. So what are some of the mistakes that people make in financial planning?
Not realizing how much money they will actually need. I think that is a big mistake. You need to crunch those numbers and see, do I have enough money? How far will that money go? Because the rule of thumb is really that for whatever assets you have, if you want to make sure that money lasts throughout the years that you are alive, you shouldn't take out more than about, depending upon your age, but about 4%. So let's say you have $1 million. Nice, simple round number. That will generate $40,000 a year. That is not a lot of money necessarily for some people. It may not be enough. So everybody needs to see how would I like to live, and what do I need to accumulate in order to live that way.
Yeah.
Another aspect of financial planning, or just life in general, that people haven't thought about is longevity. So people are saying, oh, by the time I'm 80, who knows, I may not be alive. And I say, that's right, you may not be alive. And they say, so then I'm sure I have enough money. And I say, well, let's look at these statistics. If you are 65 years old today and in relatively good health, your chances of living till age 87 if you're a man, or age 88 if you're a woman, are 50. That's 50%. Your chances of living to 92 or 93 are 25%. So if you're 65 years old and you live till age 87, you have 22 years to cover financially. And of course, if you live longer, even that many more years. So I think people need to be very realistic about the amount of money that they need, and also the amount of time that they may be spending on the surface of this planet Earth.
Well, I think that's one of the things that I see among some of the older adults that we work with, those in their 80s and to 90 now, is that when they were growing up, you retired at 65, you know, their parents retired at 65, lived another 5 years and were gone. And they never envisioned living and being active and healthy into their 80s and 90s. And so they planned for 80. And now here they are.
And here they are.
And really anxious about whether it will last for the rest of their lifetime.
And I think people who are who are younger than that, who are younger than the 80 and 90-year-old person who's 40, 50, and 60, are saying, well, my father died of a heart attack at age 65, so I'm sure I won't live any longer. But again, you want to look at the statistics, and you want to look at what's happening in society. We have medical innovation, pharmaceuticals, and equipment that help people live longer. And all the statistics are showing that people are not dying, not as many people are dying from that instantaneous heart attack, that they are living many more years because of medical innovation. But they may, at one point in time or another, start to feel infirm because the rest of the body is giving out. There's arthritis, there's joint problems, you need a hip replacement, whatever. They are losing energy. And so they are living longer and hopefully healthier, but there may come a time when they're not living in optimal health, and they may need some help.
Memory loss issues.
Memory loss issues.
Mean that you need extra help.
Right, Alzheimer's, dementia.
Yeah.
And so all of this has to be planned for. And again, as I said, what we do is take a look at all the ifs. What would happen if? And are we prepared?
One of the things that I think we need to touch on, because I hear about it a lot, and that is the decision about when to collect Social Security.
Yes.
That I think, again, when I look at people who are older, a lot of them retired at 62, took the early payment, but certainly the Social Security Administration is encouraging people to wait longer, and I think it's important for people to look at the data which talks about how much more you can collect if you do put off retirement for a couple of years and wait to collect.
That's absolutely true. For the boomers, every year that you wait, you are in the amount that you can collect from Social Security increases by 8%. So let's say for someone who has earned the optimal amount, just to take one group of people, if they start collecting at age 62, they'll get about $1,800 a month and some other change. If they wait till age 66, they'll get $2,300 a month, an increase of $500 a month. If they wait till age 70, because Social Security still increases every year by 8% up till age 70. So if they wait till age 70, I believe they get something like $3,100 a month.
And if you're starting late in terms of getting started and you think that $1 million might not be enough, this is another element that you can look at in terms of having enough of a monthly income to meet your expenses.
Well, every situation is different. So, for instance, if someone is 62, has lost their job, and has not saved, and so therefore they can't meet their monthly expenses, they're going to say, oh dear, I'm going to start collecting Social Security at age 62. But for those who have planned and who really have enough to meet their monthly expenses in case they retire, either voluntarily or not, they then have the opportunity to wait to collect Social Security and then reap the benefits of waiting.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Let's take a minute to talk about the role that debt plays. You said earlier that, goal number one is to not have debt. And I think, what I see in the recent economy is that a lot of people lived really big. Yeah, they had a house, they took out a mortgage on the house to fix it up again, to add on a room, to, whatever, to buy a new car, and that there is a lot of debt out there. What role does that play in financial planning for retirement?
I meet a fair number of people who have done that because they're all out there. And again, although this economic downturn is very painful, what it has done is made people realize that they have to set aside money initially to reduce the debt, and once they've reduced the debt, to start to really save for that rainy day. I do work with people on a regular basis who have credit card debt, and I see people every day who are paying interest rates of up to 29.99% on their credit card debt.
How do you ever get out of that?
We work on that. For instance, last week I called with somebody to his credit card company and to see if they would reduce the interest rate. He had 2 credit cards. One said, absolutely not. The other one said, oh, okay, we'll reduce it. It took a 5-minute phone call to reduce the rate substantially by about 40%.
And I know that Consumer Credit Counseling Service is a really good nonprofit resource, a trustworthy resource to go to. There are offices in Hamilton. They have another office here in Princeton, but through the Family Guidance Center. But they can help people work out those kinds of plans.
Yes, I know quite a number of people
Yeah.
who do go there, and it is a wonderful resource for people who have spent more than than the money that was coming in.
What are the kinds of components that would go together in a good financial plan?
Again, the first thing is that you want to make sure that you don't have debt, that you have a cash reserve. The next thing that you want to work on is making sure that you're covered for what we call the ifs in life. Two of you, a couple has children. If one of them passes away, are we taking care of that kind of risk? If one of them becomes disabled, are we taking care of that kind of risk? Are we taking care of it through life insurance in case there's an untimely death, disability insurance in case one becomes disabled? And as one grows older, I would recommend anyone age 50 and older to get long-term care insurance. So those are the essentials in terms of, first you have cash reserve, then you take care of the risk. And then you start to make sure that you're saving for retirement. We take into account the number of years that you have until you may need that money. We take into account, in essence, what's called your risk tolerance. How would you like to invest so that you don't stay up at night? There's a lot
so
of...
that every time the news says the Dow dropped 200 points last night, you don't freak out.
Yes. And actually, one of the things that we see is that typically if somebody works with a financial planner, they will not freak out, or at least not as to such a great extent, and they will remain invested in the way that they have felt comfortable.
They'll stick with their plan.
They'll stick with their plan. And that actually helps you increase the return on your money. It helps you to grow your assets. Whereas if you get scared and you pull your money out in a down market, your rate of return plummets to very little. And so you want to make sure that you have really taken a look at how much risk you feel comfortable with. And surprisingly, or probably it shouldn't be so surprising, when there's an economic downturn, people feel that their risk tolerance is much less, and when the market is going up, they feel their risk tolerance is that much more. And so when we work with somebody, what we really want to do is lay it out in terms of the dollar amount and the percentage amount that you may lose in a down market. In many ways, I'm talking to people about a pessimistic outlook. But that will actually help people increase their rate of return and get to their goal if we are very realistic. So again, let's say you have $1 million, and I say, how would you feel if you're invested totally in stock? And with this last economic downturn, we know that a total stock investment, the average person lost 53%, more than half of their money. So how would you feel if your $1 million, half of it went up in smoke? Would you be able to live through that without pulling your money out? What would you like to do? And when I put it in terms of dollars and cents and percentages, people have a very different answer than saying, oh, yes, I'm moderate. I have a moderate risk tolerance. I want to know, what does that mean in dollars and cents? And that's part of the whole financial planning process. And that keeps us on a very comfortable, even keel, regardless of whatever happens. So that's another part of the whole financial planning process.
I'm thinking as we talk, that a lot of these things seem like the kinds of things that people that have extra assets can do. And that there are also a lot of folks in our community who are, eking by, and a lot of our older adults who are living on Social Security and often not much else, that there really isn't a pension, or there was a small, I have one person, I think the pension is like $27 a month, you know? And you kind of wonder how to make that income stretch. What are some of the kinds of things that people can do, because what looked like a lot of money 40 years ago when they retired isn't so much.
For people who are, let's say, 80, 75, 80 years old, who really don't feel that they can go back to work, and they're living virtually on Social Security, what you want to do is make sure you stay within a budget.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that in order to make those dollars stretch, that whatever you're applying your money to is well worth it. For instance, I spoke to a woman who has not much more than Social Security, and she went to the eye doctor, and that's all really she needed was reading glasses. And she spent $300 on those glasses, where there are other ways to find glasses that might not cost so much, because $300 for someone who's just on Social Security is a lot of money.
Right.
So in those instances, we really want to work on what are your expenses, and weigh how much can you afford to expend on any given item.
That's one time that I also encourage people to come into the Senior Resource Center, because we know a lot of those other little programs and things that are there. I mean, your example of the eyeglasses, there might be something that we can work out with a provider that we know that would be less, or prescriptions. So much money goes into health care and prescriptions, and there are several medication discount cards that will take a little bit off here or some off there, or we know about some of the other prescription plans through the pharmaceutical companies that can help people when they have to have a particular medication. There's a lot of little pieces like that that help.
And if you use enough of those little pieces, it can make a substantial difference in the kind of life that you're living. You can eat better, you can clothe yourself more attractively just by the kind of using the kind of resources that the Senior Resource Center provides.
Right.
It's true.
So, now I know, Marion, that you're going to be talking about these things at one of our programs in September. Our Engage Retirement and Encore Career program has a lecture series that we're co-hosting with the library. The programs are offered at the Princeton Public Library. They're open to the public for free. But to talk about various aspects of planning retirement. And so Marion will be there on September 14th at 7 o'clock. Talking about the things we've talked about today and expanding on that in more detail. We also have a program that I think you'll be involved with as well on October 23rd of this year, which is our Plan for the Future program, and we're calling it Retirement in 3D, because there's so many aspects to planning a successful retirement, and we really want to encourage people to come in and learn more about retirement and all of the opportunities that are out there, but also how to make those opportunities work out in your life. So Marion's information will be up at the end of the show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.